We're super excited to have the winners of the Volts prizes from the HackMoney Hackathon. So we'll be hearing a little bit more about their experience building on Volts, any lessons learned along the way, and potentially some ideas for future hackathons. If anyone here is not familiar with HackMoney, it's a virtual 30-day hackathon organized by ETH Global, really good group of folks who put on events like that, ETH New York, ETH Amsterdam, just a ton of great opportunities for developers to build new applications. At HackMoney, there was over 300,000 in prizes available to hackers to build on a wide range of DeFi projects, Volt being one of them. So it's really, we think one of the best ways to get started, even if you have a day job, hacking something in DeFi, and you'd actually be pretty surprised at the amount of these projects that go on to become venture funded and super successful projects. So today we'll be hearing from ECLP, which is building LP optimization tools. We'll be hearing from Volts Liquid, who has built a liquidator bot, and we'll be hearing from Leverage Yield, who made some really cool integrations with Gearbox. In terms of the format of the call, we'll allow each team to present what they've been working on and share their screen. I'll ask a few questions, see if people on Volts Labs have any questions, and then we'll just open it up to the community, see what people have. But to start things off, I want to bring on the Volts Labs CEO, Simon, just to talk a little bit about the experience with HackMoney. So Simon, without further ado, how was HackMoney experience different from something like ETH Amsterdam?
Hey Nick, sorry, just mute people. Sorry, just to reiterate what Nick was saying before, if people don't mind muting if they're not talking, it'd be awesome. Well, I mean, the obvious difference is that it's remote. And actually, honestly, some of the in-person events, like ETH Amsterdam, like there is obviously a lot of energy when you're in a room and everybody's hacking away for 48 hours. But one of the benefits of HackMoney, where it's longer, or because it's remote, it's able to be longer. It means that the teams are able to both get into something which is, I think, arguably kind of more complicated, and they're also able to go a lot further. So from our perspective as a labs team, just helping these teams kind of hack together something through the hackathon, it's been really great to see both how much further the teams are able to go, but also like the complexity or the sophistication, maybe is the other word to use, of the ideas which are actually being created, which is obviously what we're kind of really excited to share with the three teams which are presenting today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've obviously seen some really cool use cases being built out at HackMoney. When you look to what's been built at ETH Amsterdam, what's been built at HackMoney, what do you think is next in terms of the applications that you think is really compelling and no one's building on yet?
Yeah, I think there's a spectrum. So there's and honestly, like there's huge amount of value that can be built across the whole of that spectrum. So if people are building stuff which abstracts away the complexity of, say, LPing on Volts, and we're going to have one team talk about that, to make it kind of easier for retail to kind of benefit from the concentrated liquidity AMM. It is a complicated product. The output for a retail user is something which is simple, which is amazing. It like abstracts away that complexity. That's kind of like one end of the spectrum, and then at the other end you can have teams, and there was a team who were doing this, but they just didn't get quite as far as the teams which are going to be talking today, where they're doing swaptions, which is obviously not necessarily something which is abstracting away the complexity for other users, but it is a super sophisticated product. And I think across that whole spectrum, there's like some really interesting ideas that can be built. I think there was one actually which came through just in the Discord the other day, which was super interesting, which it was almost, in many ways, is almost like the next iteration of a Yearn Vault. So if you go all the way back to Yearn right at the beginning, one of the things that it was doing was essentially moving your assets between Avi and Compound as the rates changed. And where the kind of next iteration of that can go is obviously these rates have converged, but there are still points where A DAI and C DAI generate different rates of return. And if you believe that those two things are kind of correlated, then when one's higher than the other, you can long one and short the other. But in order to generate returns off that, where these rates are now kind of closer together, you need to be able to do that with leverage, which is one of the things which Vaults unlocks. And I think what's interesting and came through obviously in Discord is like almost taking that as a strategy and similar to the LP optimization, just abstracting away the complexity of that strategy such that it can become a yearn vault or something else, so that retail users can invest into that and benefit from the sophisticated strategy that is being used in the background. And I think that's one of the, alongside a bunch of other things, I think that's one of the really interesting things which could be built in the short term.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to your point on, you mentioned the swaptions team who are kind of working during the hackathon, but are really just working on incredibly interesting ideas that, I don't think exist at all in the crypto or DeFi space. And I mean, they brought up a good point. Like, these hackathons are jumping off points, just because the hackathon end doesn't mean the building and excitement will end, or that, Volts Labs will, won't stop helping you. So maybe one final question, Simon, is just, if there are developers who are listening to this, or maybe they participated in HackMoney, what's the best way for them to, continue chatting with the Volts Labs team, and what kind of support do you think we can offer?
Yeah, we have for all the teams which are getting deep into the weeds of building something, please reach out. We have individual channels either in Discord or in Telegram where we'll add people from the Volts Labs team, from the Volts Labs team to really help you both get up to speed, to kind of bounce questions off kind of on more complicated topics, be it to do with the integration or actually even just be it to do with the ideation and kind of like coming up with the direction you want to take for your kind of like protocol and idea. So please do get in touch, and we do set up these channels, we do jump on calls, and we're keen to help people as much as we can in order to help you get your idea set up and running.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Evan. Why don't we go ahead and move right into presentations from the HackMoney teams. So ECLP, if you guys are around, would be awesome if you want to share your screens and just walk through a little bit of what you built during the hackathon.
Sure.
Yep, sure.
And let us know if you have any issues with sharing.
Yeah, it's. I think it's coming up, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
great.
I see it. Perfect.
Great. So welcome to ECLP. It's a protocol that optimizes your liquidity provisions on concentrated liquidity pools. So may that be concentrated liquidity pools on Volts or any other protocols. Today we're going to talk about Volts. So yeah, the whole concept of concentrated liquidity pools is, I think, quite complex for most retail investors and even maybe for institutional investors. So some of the benefits of it is that you do get higher capital efficiency, and users are being able to accrue more fees, so essentially APY. But this does come at a cost. You basically need to make more decisions. And yeah, to be specific, you need to you need to deploy your capital on specific tick ranges. You need to decide the distribution of this liquidity within these tick ranges. And overall, that makes up for a user experience that is tremendously fuzzy and a lot more difficult. So this is what we set on to improve. So yeah, we bring back easy liquidity providing for the users, and on the back end we have an optimization code. We have our quant here that may talk a bit more about the math side. But we do the heavy lifting when it comes to the optimization of the tick ranges and the distribution of the liquidity within the tick ranges. Yeah, and we're also aiming to have an user interface and some analytics dashboard in order to make it easier for the users to analyze their liquidity provision. So how do we do that? Well, for those of you that are a bit mathy, so we've formalized this into a stochastic optimization problem, and we basically fit a Markov chain on historical data. and basically generate some stochastic trajectories, which basically represent like the probability that your, for example, volts APY, your variable APY will go down or up, or your fixed rate or whatever. And then we optimize the expectation of the utility function. So yeah, if you're familiar with optimization, you're trying to lower this. And this provides like a rebalancing strategy for your concentrated liquidity. And so the consequence of this is that you basically have superior user experience. This is fully data-driven, so we're using historical data as well as live data in order to predict these stochastic trajectories, and it's probabilistic by nature. Yeah, and so for example, on the right, you can see a distribution of liquidity for a WEF USDC pool. And so, for example, this active swap price, you can see that most of the people did not distribute their liquidity at the right tick. So they would want to distribute most of their liquidity at this active swap price. Yeah, so this is our team, myself, Enel, and Maurice, and Victor, and we'll be happy to take any questions that you have.
Really cool, guys. Just for structure of the questions, I'll ask a few. Definitely want to see if someone like Simon has any questions, and then for folks in the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to type in the text channel we have right above 26 May community call, and we'll read out those questions to the ECLP team. But just want to kind of kick things off with a question on concentrated liquidity in general. Is obviously a new concept that was pioneered by Dan Robinson and the Uniswap team. What's your understanding for how much the crypto community fully understands concentrated liquidity? Is it still a new concept with a high barrier to entry? Is it becoming more commonplace? People are familiar. What's your kind of overall sense of that?
So I'm going to take this one.
Yep.
I feel that I like the way you phrase it. I definitely feel that concentrated liquidity is still something that a lot of people struggle with because even when you talk to like people that are really involved in the like crypto space and are developers and everything, they are still not sure what concentrated liquidity means. And I feel that you could see that actually for a while because the switch from Uniswap v2 to Uniswap v3 was actually quite slow. One could have thought that like the migration from Uniswap v2 to Uniswap v3 would have been immediate, but that's not what happened. And so I think this shows that concentrated liquidity is still something that's not very well understood by all market participants and just all developers and everything. But I did notice, and I think one can notice that it's becoming more and more widespread. And I think and I think that since more and more projects are using the concentrated liquidity is like has a bright future in the sense that more and more people are going to get familiar with it because protocols such as Vaults, for instance, are using it. And so it's definitely a good step forward to integrate it into different protocols such as Vault.
Yeah, and what do you think for your average user, maybe someone who's familiar, LPing on Uniswap v2? What's the hardest UX challenge of moving from normal LPing to concentrated liquidity LPing?
Well, if we're taking like really the average Uniswap v2 user, so for instance, talking about my friends who all just like liquidity provide, they used to just provide liquidity on Uniswap v2. Well, their main issue is going to be like, now I have like to pay all these gas fees. It's really I would say it's like basically it comes out to gas fees in the sense that you have to optimize your liquidity, so you have to move the tick range and everything, and that costs a lot of gas. So even though right now the gas prices have sort of normalized, it was not always the case, and it can become quite expensive to adjust your tick range because like every profit you're going to make from LPing is going to get eaten alive basically by the gas fees you get if you don't have a huge capital. So that's why I think it's important that protocols can pull together users and you can so that the liquidity management part can be pooled. And so even if you don't have a huge capital, your profit doesn't get eaten away by gas fees, for instance.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something, if that's okay. Um, Retail investor wanted to, for example, select the tick ranges and the the liquidity distribution within the ticks. Uniswap does allow you to see the liquidity distribution that is currently distributed for a specific pool, but that does not guarantee you that this is going to be the strategy that's going to maximize the fees. So, for example, you might see that most people distributed their liquidity around a specific price, for example, for a ETH USDC pool. But it's not because most of the people did that this is going to be the most optimal way to earn the fees. So I might add that most retail investors might not have a single clue how to distribute this liquidity in order to maximize their fees. And that's a huge issue because you need to do some research on that. You need to pull some data.
Yeah, I think these are all really good points, and obviously it's pretty amazing what you managed to build during the hackathon. One of the things which I guess is it could one of the challenges with Uniswap and concentrated liquidity is that when you're doing it on what I would describe as effectively spot markets, so say USDC and wrapped ETH, the kind of behavior which that or the price behavior and the way in which the price moves between that pair, it doesn't necessarily exhibit anything like some sort of mean reversing behavior like what you may see in rates markets. And I'm curious the extent to which you kind of you kind of explored that and the comparables in the way in which the actual like underlying price moves on Uniswap versus what will happen on Vaults when Vaults goes live, and just the extent to which you think that would alter the models and that type of thing which you built out.
Yeah,
I can take this one. So yeah, indeed, in both there is some the models for interest rates, they exhibit some degree of mean reversion, which let's say simplifies the problem on one side, but on the other side you can end up paying this funding fee because you can end up outside of the price can end up outside of the tick range where you were providing liquidity, and so you will be exposed to paying either the fixed rate or the variable rate. And while it's true that there is some reversion, it's not completely clear how this funding fee is going to affect your expected P&L. So it's simpler in the sense that you know the price will come back eventually, but you don't know when exactly, and you are paying in the meanwhile the funding fee. So you have to take that into account as well.
Yeah,
But
I'd say it's an interesting opportunity too for like LP optimization vaults on top of Vaults protocol is, obviously there's no impermanent loss because the single asset LP. There is what you mentioned with funding rate risk and ways that these kind of vaults could optimize around that is a really kind of unexplored and space that has huge potential.
Yeah, and I think it highlights this type of project. It's just essentially an optimization challenge. But doing that in the most efficient way is not completely straightforward, and there's ways in which that can always be optimized, which is why I think it's so exciting what you built. Nick, did you want to kind of carry on with questions?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute there. Yeah. Cool. Maybe another question would be, I saw you mention that UI and analytics functions are coming soon. So, what kind of progress has been made on those features, and what should we expect in the weeks ahead?
Yeah. So I can take this one. We haven't made a whole lot of progress at the moment on the UI. We're still focusing on making the optimization work better. So that's the first priority, because the main product is basically the optimization part, which maximizes the fee. So that's the first priority in the short term. In the medium term would be to make the UI. We currently don't have a front-end dev, so we're happy to work with any front-end devs that is interested in the project.
That's a good call out for anyone in the audience. If you if you know front end and want to contribute to a really cool project, definitely talk to these guys. Maybe another question there would just be, what was the hardest part of building? Did you guys get stuck at some point? Was it all kind of smooth sailing? What was just the overall development experience like during Hackathon?
Yeah, it's definitely a rocky terrain. There was a lot of things to figure out. So I think, yeah, there's two parts. Formulate the mathematical problem in a way that is efficient and that would give us a result, and also formulate the architecture basically of the smart contract of the backend side. And so we kind of split the team in two, kind of the quants team and then the smart contract team, in order to be able to make some progress. But definitely, yeah, it was not some smooth sailing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, you guys definitely did an amazing work in the time allotted. Um, well, this is really great. Again, if anyone in the community has questions they want to ask, please feel free to put them in the text channel 26-May-community call. Just in the interest of time, let's kind of keep moving with the next team. So, thank you, ECLP. Volts Liquid, if you guys want to share your screen.
Thank you for having us.
Hey guys, hey. One sec.
No worries.
Can you guys see?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, so it's been great time building for Waltz. I really enjoyed my last 3 weeks. Just wanted to say that. It's been great communicating with the team, and thanks to everyone who helped me during this time. So I've built a liquidation bot for Waltz, and essentially I'm just gonna dive straight into the architecture. For those who haven't seen my video on ETH Global, this is gonna benefit you. So essentially, there are 5 main parts of the liquidation bot. Starting from the left here, it's account manager that basically fetches the data of all the accounts trading on Vault. We process that data and then put it onto DynamoDB for the risk engine to pick up. And then the account manager basically puts a message on the SQS queue to let the risk engine know that it's done its job, and that risk engine should kick off and start processing the data we retrieve from vaults. Then the risk engine is going to go and get some other data from smart contracts on vaults, like liquidation margin and like liquidation reward. It's going to decide what are the positions that are good to liquidate, and then it's going to speak to the bot contract, which has some method exposed. It's like an interface to speak to Vault's margin engine, which is going to go ahead and then make those liquidations happen. I've taken this a bit further after the hackathon, and I've put that onto AWS infrastructure now. So the products that you see here, like DynamoDB and SQS, are provided by AWS. But for running things locally and for the submission of Hackathon, I used local stack to spin those up on my local machine. But now these guys are basically running in AWS, and I can show you some exciting data that we get from Vaults. So this is the data that we get from Vaults. These are all the position IDs, the margins, the margin engine on which those positions were created, owners, and some other data to make the liquidations happen. Then this data is picked up by the risk engine, which is running here. And I was hoping for a live demo of how it works, but unfortunately, Infura is limiting me by their rate limit. So I'm kind of DDoSing them right now, and they stop my requests from actually going off to the blockchain. But when it was working, I had a position open on Vaults which had 100,000 notional USDC, and for some hours it was running, and it made 2 liquidations here. Now these are the liquidations kind of happening right now as I spin it up, but it doesn't get through to my account, unfortunately. Like it liquidates some accounts on Vaults, but it doesn't go through to mine. So this is the transaction history of the contract, and interestingly, it accumulated 2,000 USDC at this point by making those liquidations on a testnet. Now, this is the subgraph from Vaults, and I'm basically filtering by the position that I have open. So this position corresponds to my position here. And yeah, essentially, these are the liquidations that match to the liquidations on the Vaults UI. Yeah, so I'm hoping to get this sorted this weekend so that I'm ready for the mainnet launch. Very exciting time, and that's pretty much what I've built during the hackathon.
Nice. It's super cool, and to have built it in such a short space of time as well is obviously like super impressive. One of the things I'm curious is, have you like what's the next step from an optimization perspective? Like if you were to assume there would be a bunch of liquidator bots running, like how is it that you're gonna, I guess, make sure that you're the one that kind of wins that race, so to speak?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and that's something that I've been thinking about for quite a while now. And I am going to re-architect how this thing works. So I don't think this architecture here is the most optimal solution that I can have for the liquidations. And I want to take this completely serverless. So instead of running this on things like ECS, so I'm not sure how good you are guys technically with like AWS products, but there is a product called Lambda functions, and I want to utilize them asynchronously. So whenever I find something, whenever I find a good position, I just kick one off and try to liquidate it right at that point in time. And with the account manager, it's quite inefficient at this point. So this is quite it's taking too long to run. So all these things are going to be put onto like serverless architecture that is going to be very quick in terms of how it can do the liquidations.
Can I ask a question?
So there's a bit of noise.
Yes. Well, if you're able to speak, that'd be helpful. No, that makes complete sense. And then I guess within it, one of the things that I was just thinking about is like on Kovan, you've made $2,000. How are you kind of like, what have you built into that, like the cost of liquidation versus like the actual kind of profit that you're going to accrue, or is that just like it's not accounting?
So it's not accounting for this yet. So it's not in the risk engine at this point. But if we were to look at, so these are the quantities that I get from here. We can see that, there are some very little quantities, like less than $1, just like cents. And then there are some that are like 1,500 USDC. So there will be logic in the risk engine for a while before I go off to serverless. There will be logic in the risk engine to handle this, and also there will be logic to like know, in advance how much gas I'm gonna pay for each transaction, and then compare that with the reward that he's gonna get. So he's gonna look and see like what liquidations are actually profitable for the bot, and if they are not profitable, like there's not much sense of liquidating them. And also we want to be looking at bigger positions, bigger quantities of what we get, because that essentially means that if someone is in out of money position, they are locking some other liquidity providers' funds in the protocol, and those funds are not used within the pool. So we want to liquidate like the bigger positions first, to unlock that capital in the pool for other trades to happen. So yeah, that's the main idea for the next few days to make this happen.
Nice. No, it's very cool. And I guess within that, sorry, I don't want to steal one of Nick's questions because I know he often asks these. What was the biggest challenge that you found whilst trying to build this?
It's a good question. There was a lot of challenges because if you ask me like 5 months ago what is DeFi, I would say I don't know. So it's all a learning curve for me. I had to write my smart contract. I had to find out how to encrypt my key to put it onto AWS. I had to find out how to actually sign transactions with certain libraries. I think I would say the biggest technical challenge was going through the EVM docs because I had a problem with the Python library that I'm using because basically that library by default uses send transaction method, and then Infura doesn't support that. You can only do send draw transaction. So I would say that was the biggest technical challenge for me during this time. But there were different ones, and I was speaking to the devs who were directing me in a good manner.
Yeah, nice. And I guess for anyone listening in, so ECLP won first place from kind of Vaults in terms of the hackathon prizes. So any developer listening in who is just getting into kind of Web3, I think that's it's quite a nice touch point, so to speak. 5 months ago, you didn't know what DeFi was, and now you're winning hackathons.
Yeah, thanks. It was it's just something that interests me, and it's an area where I'm just saying for the devs that maybe not into this that much at this point in time, but there's a lot of things to learn, and you can actually kind of work individually outside of working hours, because I do have a full-time job, and I was working on this just outside after work. I would come home, do something, and then took some days off to work on it full day. But I'll just say that for the devs that are just coming in, just go find some project and do it. That's the way you learn. And then DeFi needs engineers to build things on. So it'll be an exciting journey for you, and you'll actually be contributing to a bigger cause.
Definitely.
No. Well, one of the things I was going to ask actually is, are you monitoring how close a position is to the liquidation zone, or are you just testing to see whether it's ready to be liquidated?
So the idea is that, hold on one sec. The idea that at this point here, the account manager is going to look at the liquidation margin for each position, and then it's going to get the health of the account, which is basically margin over liquidation margin. So if that's close to 1, so it's 2, 3, maybe it's 1.5, we would be closely monitoring that. And then if it's a massive amount, 100, there's no point at looking at that account, because unless the rates move very quickly, there's no point even looking at that account. But there's a lot of things that need to be built on top of this. This is not by far the best liquidation bot that you can have. And as I said, this architecture is not the best, and some things that it's doing are not the best. But it's going to be work in progress throughout. So yeah, exciting times ahead.
And the key really there is getting something out that works, and then you can iterate on it rather than trying to go straight to the thing that's...
Yeah, that's the idea. There will be a few versions, I think, specifically for Vaults. And then, I can test out, benchmark them against each other and see what performs better. And yeah, that's the idea.
And I think for anyone listening to this, obviously getting liquidated as a user is never a nice experience. For what it's worth, having liquidated bots existing around the protocol is just incredibly important for the health of the protocol. So you don't want positions which don't have enough margin to basically support their side of the trade. At which point, if that is the case, a liquidator bot can step in before that occurs. So making sure there is a healthy set of liquidator bots around the protocol just ensures the system never ends up in a position of being insolvent. So it's not nice as a user, but it's incredibly important for the health of the protocol.
Yeah, guys, actually it worked now, in full worked for me. So, you remember that position was there before? It was only 2 liquidations. Now I've liquidated the whole thing. So the whole notional is gone. But yeah, something's going on here. But yeah, so it's working now.
And maybe we did get one question from the community that I want to ask from Smug Lobo. If the competition is as fierce as for MEV, aren't you afraid that Lambda is just going to add too much latency?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'll have to consider once the competition kicks in. The idea is that I'm going to monitor who is the liquidator. So given the subgraph, I can know who does the liquidations. And if I see that, so there is some liquidator that's not me, it's going to push me to, optimize it a lot better so that I win those liquidations over someone else. With Lambda, the reason why for Lambda is because I can just fire one off and then let it do its job. Because currently it's all working from a single container. It does things asynchronously, but there needs to be a comparison between the two. I agree. It might not be the best solution, but for the most optimal one, we'll see what I can do to win the market.
Mm-hmm. Well, awesome. Just in interest of time, we should probably move on. But what you're building here is incredibly valuable for the whole community and the safe functioning of both protocols. So thank you for sharing what you've been working on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Really enjoyed speaking to you all.
Yeah. So just a reminder, if you have additional questions, feel free to post them in the text channel. And we're now going to move on to leverage yield. So Frank, if you want to share your screen, we can kick off.
Yeah, so my project is called Leverage Yield. So essentially, it's integration between UVox and the Vault protocol and with other protocol. So for those not familiar with Gearbox is a protocol which allow user to easily to leverage their balance and to interact with a different DeFi protocol. So the way how Gearbox works is the borrower can deposit certain fund to open a credit account. And after credit account open, the user can choose how many leverages they want to take. The credit card account essentially is just a contract holding the user fund, and which will be managed by the Gearbox protocol. And you can use the leverage account to interact with the different DeFi protocol. And also, besides borrowers, there's also definitely have the liquidity provider, which will provide the pool and interest. And this fund is a liquid pool will be used for the borrower to leverage their strategy. So Gearbox is a very composable protocol, and you can easily to interact with multiple DeFi protocol. For example, in this example, it basically to leverage WBTC and sell it on the Uniswap and deposits it swaps the USDC the WBTC to USDC and then deposit USDC to Yuan to interest. And by this way, essentially is shorting the BTC, and you can also actually use interest for the fund which you sold for USDC. So basically, but if you want to interact with other DeFi protocol, you need to develop a adapter to allow the Gearbox to interact with the third-party DeFi protocol. So basically, my hack is to work on the adapter for multiple DeFi protocol with Gearbox. So what is one of the protocol which I developed the adapter for. So essentially, I think in the vote, I need to find the major contract which is the votes which will be user interact with, which is the iPhone fee. So basically, I use this. I take the interface for this contract, and inside the adapter, I need to implement a similar function which is inside the iPad contract. So basically, inside this contract is essentially taking the fund from the credit account and sending over sending over to the F priority contract, and also in the end we need to verify some token balance internet flow in and flow out from the credit account to make sure everything is working correctly. So this is something enforced by the Gearbox protocol. Yeah, so this is a quick overview for my project.
This is super cool. I mean, the fact that you're able to combine, two different projects in the same hackathon, and it sounds like even more than two, is just awesome. What was it like working with, multiple code bases? Was it pretty easy to pick up? Was there, a lot of like switching you had to do? It just kind of mentally, what was that whole development process like?
Yeah, I think definitely it take some learning. To basically, I need to walk you through the documentation of different projects to understand what they are doing, and also I need to figure out which contract to interact with and to how to integrate with Gearbox.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, it's super cool, and it really talks to the composability of DeFi, which is obviously I guess one of the superpowers of the whole space. I'm kind of curious. Does it mean then that you essentially have double leverage as a user if you're trading through
Yeah.
Gear defaults?
Yeah, so as a user, you are able to choose your own leverage. So I think Gearbox currently allow you have a full-time leverage. I think at least for WBTC, that's the number. For other, I think its leverage number is configurable, but I think currently they are set at 4 is the maximum leverage you can get.
Nice. I know that certain people in the community, Just Human, I think, is one of the biggest defenders of this, having competitions about how much leverage they can take. So being able to double stack leverage is, I don't know, perhaps interesting for some people.
Yeah.
And what like just within that, then I guess I'm kind of curious, like what were, to steal again one of Nick's questions, like what were some of the biggest challenges that you found kind of going through this process whilst working, I guess, at a remote hackathon?
Yeah, I think definitely you mean compared to in-person hackathon with remote hackathon?
Just generally the challenges you faced whilst going through HackMoney.
Yeah, I think my experience with HackMoney is generally good. I think the major challenge is I think there's for the inside the project inside the HackMoney. So some sponsor their project is more mature, some project is at the early stage. So at the early stage, I think it may require more effort to dig into the documentation. Maybe not as mature as other existing projects, so it would require more effort to going through the documentation to understand what this project does.
Yeah. And what are there any kind of specific use cases you see coming out of people, as you said, kind of like stacking leverage? Do you think it introduces like a lot of risk for the user? Do you think it unlocks use cases that weren't possible? How do you kind of see like composable leverage playing out?
I think it really depends. I think leverage definitely involve a lot of risk. If you play very risky strategy and you do not know what you're doing, they could basically because if in normal case if you take full-time leverage, can possibly lose all your money if the market go down 25% if it doesn't know well what you're doing. But if you are taking some more safer strategy like leverage is balance to earn some yield, using some yield-based strategy, I think it may be a good idea or safer idea to do a leverage to earn actual yield.
Yeah. Simon, do you have a question?
Well, I was just going to ask what the next steps are for you. Like, what do you want to do from here?
Yeah, I think definitely it's more interesting to explore different. I think will be quite interesting to because currently I think currently there's maybe explore different more usage with votes and or more usage with leverage. What people can do with leverage. Because I think generally the concept of as I mentioned, like the concept of leverage is very risky. I wonder see if there's maybe more less risky way for people to take leverage and earn actual income for their strategy.
Yeah, interesting for sure. And then, what kind of advice would you have to other developers who may be on the call? When it comes to kind of combining multiple protocols like this, was there anything you figured out along the way that could make it quicker the next time you try to do so?
Uh, yeah, I think definitely going through the documentation is very helpful, and also quickly going through the GitHub GitHub repo of the Coursera project and looking through the interface they providing in the contract. I think will be very helpful. And definitely connect with the team on the in the Discord channel. Also will be helpful to moving forward.
Awesome. Well, I know we're kind of bumping up on time here. I definitely want to see if there's anyone else in the community who has questions for any of these teams. So if any come to mind in the next 30 seconds or so, feel free to either post them in the text channel, or you can unmute yourself and ask. But yeah, definitely want to see if anyone has anything they'd like to ask. Leverage yield, Volts Liquid, or ECLP. All right. Looks like we have one question from Altoid. Um, Given that you're fitting a parametric model, is there any concern about direct model manipulation? Altoid, I'm not sure which project this is for. Is this for leverage yield?
Would you mind repeat? Yeah, would you mind repeat the question?
So it looks like the Markov chain things. Was that the EZLP project? I think they mentioned Markov chains. Yeah, so there's a question for EZLP. EZLP, given that you're fitting a parametric model, is there any concern about direct model manipulation?
Yeah, I'll let you get back.
Yeah, what type of model manipulation are you talking about? Like from data side? Like what's the exact manipulation of your mind? Or you mean like overfitting type of thing?
They have saying changing data to get desired outcomes.
Oh, so it's like more overfitting type of thing. Um, um, yeah, I mean definitely, but that's part of the fitting process. So you need to apply some um, good practices in the training of the model, and the Markov chain is just a preliminary type of model. But I think eventually we will switch to some stochastic process, more like Cox Ingersoll Ross type of model, because or also maybe some neural networks, maybe something more data driven, depending on what you want to do. But with all these techniques or methods, you always have like trouble coming from what type of data you fit in, how is like normalized, and how do you interpret the results. So yeah, definitely, but that's part of the game, right? Like, so that's part of why it's not easy. Otherwise it would be just a fit function and you're done.
Yeah, there's another, I think that adversary may break model assumptions intentionally.
Adversary might break the model assumption. Yes. Okay, but this really gets into the training of the model. Yeah. So what's adversary in with this type of data? So this data is super noisy, and you take that for given, right? Market data usually is really noisy, especially with high resolution data. So adversary basically means that you have a data point that is similar or close to a data point in your training set, and the outcome of the model is like completely wrong, right? So you want to predict something, and you have a scenario that is similar. You have like a dog that looks like a dog. You add some noise to that image, if it's images, and this image is predicted as a, I don't know, cat or something. But yes, but do you have like a more specific like question? Like, because of course there are concerns, but that's part of the training.
Yeah,
Like,
we can always take this.
As you're training the model, as you're training the model, and maybe you try with some data, and then you see what the result is. These are those things that you should get into detail to actually verify what is breaking, what is not breaking, and if stuff is breaking, then you should either change the model, either change the training, either change the normalization of data. It can be any of these variables that go into the result. So yes to that question, but it depends on what exactly you are seeing when you get the output from the model.
Can I just ask a quick question? I remember in the presentation you mentioned that you're maximizing the utility function, the expectation of the utility function when you're kind of optimizing your model. Could you please kind of elaborate more onto like how you constructed this function and kind of what thought process went into it?
Yeah. So I think the framework is generally coming from stochastic dynamic programming. So there will be like a, let's say, stochastic process that you can either take a model, a parametric model. You can either fit. So you can have a model that you're fitting from data, or you can have just historical data. And based on any of these trajectories, stochastic trajectories that you get from the model, you're going to define this reward function. And this reward function will be stochastic and will have other inputs that are not the trajectory. And these other inputs would be the actual parameters you want to optimize for. So you will have, in this case, the width of the tick range, so upper and lower tick range.
Mm-hmm.
You can have, if you want the leverage, you can have the allocation of liquidity within the tick range, and you also have the gas fee.
Mm-hmm.
So so these are your inputs basically, is with the stochastic trajectory, and the value of this function on each stochastic trajectory is going to be a real number, and that's your expected reward. Not expected, sorry. That's just the reward.
How's the reward itself defined? Are you maximizing the Sharpe ratio of your model or any other kind of variable of interest?
Just the like if you have a trajectory and you provide the liquidity in some ranges, and then you were just to withdraw liquidity for each trajectory, you will get just a return at the end, right? If you run this model from time 0 to time t, you will get a value at the end.
Oh, so you're maximizing the return effectively.
Yes, so it's just that value. The expected return, yes. The expectation of the value over next trajectories. Yeah.
Do you take into account the variability of those returns?
I think not currently, but I think that's something that needs to be integrated as well. Because yeah, of course, being there stochasticity in these trajectories, yeah, you can have like some very positive returns that are very specific, and then you can have like some like the average can be much worse than one specific result. So yeah, that's something that needs to be integrated.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, some really interesting kind of technical discussion there, guys. Well, let's see if there's any other questions. As a reminder, you can always post questions after the fact in this text channel, and we can get them answered for you. But with that, I really want to thank everyone for joining the call, especially our 3 winning hackathon teams. So thank you to the folks at ECLP, Volts Liquid, and Leverage Yield. Really great discussions on each of these, and really excited to see what you guys do in the weeks and months ahead. So with that, thanks again for everyone for joining, and we'll just take any other further questions or discussions to the text channel. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.